The first time I saw the shadow, I thought I was losing my mind. It was just after 6 p.m., the kind of warm Texas evening where the sun hangs low and gold over the fence line. I was standing in my backyard with a garden hose in one hand, watering the rosemary planters my mother had given me before she passed, when the light suddenly changed. Not dimmer, blocked. I looked up, and there it was, a wooden frame hanging over my yard like some kind of unfinished threat. At first, my brain couldn't make sense of it. The beams extended past the property line, high above my back patio, casting a long dark strip over my grass and the edge of my kitchen windows. For one long second, all I could do was stare. Then I heard laughter from next door, male, confident, pleased with itself. I stepped back and saw my neighbor, Grant Holloway, standing on the half-finished structure with a beer in his hand, looking down at my backyard like he'd just added a new room to his house. He raised the bottle toward me and smiled. "Pretty nice, right?" That was the moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. Because no normal man accidentally builds a second-story balcony over somebody else's backyard and then asks for compliments. And Grant Holloway was not a normal man. He was the kind of neighbor who acted like property lines were just suggestions for poorer people. By the time he was done, he'd turned my quiet backyard into a surveillance deck. By the time I was done, he was standing in a courtroom watching a judge order the entire thing torn down. But before any of that happened, I stood in my own yard, looking up at a stranger's balcony hanging over my head, and felt something cold crawl down my spine. Because if a man is bold enough to build over your backyard in broad daylight, you have to wonder what else he thinks he owns. My name is Daniel Reeves, and I live in a subdivision outside Fort Worth, Texas, in a neighborhood called Willowbrook Estates. It's the kind of place that looks peaceful from the outside. Brick homes, wide sidewalks, big oak trees, fences lined up so neatly you'd think the whole neighborhood had been measured with a ruler. I bought my house in 2021 after my divorce. It was the first place that felt truly mine in years. Small but solid, 1 story, 3 bedrooms, a decent backyard with enough room for a grill, raised planters, and a weathered cedar swing I rebuilt myself. I didn't buy it because it was impressive. I bought it because it was quiet. For the first year, it was exactly that. Then Grant Holloway moved in next door. Grant was in his early 40s, worked in commercial real estate, drove a black lifted truck that looked too large for the driveway, and had the kind of loud confidence that fills space before the person even enters it. The first time we met, he leaned over the fence while I was staining the swing and said, "You know, if you ever want to sell, this lot combined with mine would be worth serious money." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Over the next few months, he kept bringing it up, not directly at first. He'd mention how the lots backed up to a drainage greenbelt and had premium redevelopment potential. He'd talk about how the area was changing, how buyers wanted more vertical space, better outdoor entertaining layouts, elevated views. I'd nod and go back to whatever I was doing. Then one evening, he said it plain. "I'm thinking of expanding back and up. If I ever make an offer on your place, don't shut it down too fast." I looked at him over the fence. "I'm not selling." He smiled like I'd said something temporary. "Everybody sells eventually." That sentence sat in my head longer than it should have. Not because it was threatening, because it sounded like a belief. The kind of belief men like Grant build their whole personalities around. The trouble started with survey flags. One Saturday morning, I walked into my backyard and found 2 neon orange marker flags pushed into the ground near the rear fence line. I pulled them out immediately and went next door. Grant answered wearing gym shorts and holding a coffee mug. "Those your survey flags?" He didn't even look confused. "Oh yeah, just preliminary measurements." "You put them in my yard." He shrugged. "It's close." "No," I said. "It's not close. It's my yard." He gave me this lazy little smile that I would come to hate. "We're just checking options." "For what?" "Possible balcony extension, maybe upper deck. Depends on permitting." I stared at him. You're not extending anything over my property. He took a sip of coffee. Let's not get worked up before there's a final design. That was Grant's style. Every boundary violation arrived dressed as if I were overreacting to it. I told him to keep every surveyor, worker, and tool off my side of the fence. He nodded like he agreed, then did what he wanted anyway. 2 weeks later, construction started. At first, it looked contained. Framing in the back, materials stacked on his patio, a crew moving fast. I figured maybe he was adding some oversized second-floor deck on his side of the line and was too arrogant to care how it looked from mine. Then I came home one Thursday and saw the support beams. They weren't just near the fence, they crossed it. Not at the ground level. He wasn't stupid enough for that. He built the structure from his side, then extended the platform outward above the property line so it projected over the back corner of my yard like a wooden ledge. The whole thing was maybe 4 feet over, but that was enough. Enough to cast shadow. Enough to invade airspace over my patio. Enough to let anyone standing there look directly into my kitchen, my back door, and the corner of my bedroom window if the blinds were open. I went next door immediately. The crew had packed up for the day, but Grant was there, standing under the frame like a man admiring his own reflection. "You built over my yard." He looked up, then back at me. "It's just an overhang. It's over my property. It's minimal. It's illegal." That made him laugh. "You sound very sure." "I am." He stepped closer. "Daniel, this neighborhood isn't made of castles. Sometimes setbacks get interpreted. Everyone works things out." "There's nothing to work out. Take it down." His face changed, still smiling, but flatter around the eyes. "That's not happening." That was the first time I felt real fear. Not because he raised his voice, because he didn't. He said it like a fact. Like my opinion had already been removed from the situation. I called the city the next morning. Then I called the county appraisal office. Then a property attorney named Melissa Tran, who came highly recommended by an older couple 3 streets over after a fence easement dispute. Melissa asked one question before anything else. "Did he actually cross the recorded property line?" "Yes." "Do you have photos?" "Plenty." "Good," she said. "Then don't argue with him again. Document everything." So I did. Photos from all angles, time-stamped video, property survey copies from closing, fence line measurements, contractor truck plates, even audio. Because after I stopped confronting Grant directly, he got comfortable talking, and comfortable people tell on themselves. 3 nights after I contacted the city, I was sitting in my kitchen around 9:30 p.m. when I heard footsteps overhead. Not on my roof, on the balcony. I went still. The structure wasn't even fully finished yet, but Grant or one of his workers was already standing above my yard in the dark. Then came the sound that made my stomach tighten, a chair scraping wood. I turned off the kitchen light and looked through the blinds. Grant was up there, alone, leaning on the unfinished rail, staring down into my yard, just standing there in the dark like he belonged over my life. That image stayed with me, not because he was technically doing anything violent, because it felt invasive in a way hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. My backyard had always been the one place in that house where I could breathe. Coffee in the mornings, quiet dinners, late calls with my sister, grilling on Sundays, sitting on the swing when I couldn't sleep. Now every time I stepped outside, I felt watched. That was the horror of it. Not noise, not construction, presence, a man placing himself above you on purpose. The city inspector came out 4 days later. Grant tried to charm him. That didn't work. The structure was measured, photographed, and compared to the permit application. Turns out the approved drawings showed a rear balcony terminating inside his lot boundary. What he built did not. The inspector issued a stop work notice on the spot. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt worse. Because that evening, Grant knocked on my door. I didn't want to answer, but the pounding kept getting louder. When I opened it, he was standing too close. No smile this time, no beer, no fake neighborly tone. "You called the city?" "Yes." You could have handled this privately. You built over my yard. He looked at me for a long second and said, You have any idea what delays cost? I said, Not my problem. His jaw tightened. Then he smiled again, and that was somehow worse. This house means more to you than it should. I felt a chill run through me. What's that supposed to mean? It means people get emotional about dirt and wood. You're acting like I came after your family. I said nothing, because the truth was, after the divorce, after losing my mom, after rebuilding my life alone in that house, he had. Not literally, but he had come after the one place that still felt safe, and somehow he knew it. Grant leaned one hand on my door frame like he already owned that too. You should think carefully before dragging this out. Then he left. I locked the door, checked every window, and barely slept that night. Melissa filed for injunctive relief the next morning. Encroachment, private nuisance, invasion of property rights, request for immediate removal and non-use. The city followed with a violation notice for non-conforming construction beyond the permitted plan. That should have been enough to make any rational person back down. Grant was not rational. 2 days later, I found a floodlight mounted under the unfinished balcony facing into my yard. Not wired yet, just mounted. The message was obvious. I took photos and sent them to Melissa. Her response was immediate. Perfect. Judges love intimidation this stupid. The hearing was set for the following week. In the meantime, one of Grant's workers did something unexpected. He called me. Private number. Sounded nervous. He said, I think you should know he told us the lot line didn't matter in practice because you'd either settle or sell. That sentence hit me harder than I expected, because it meant this had never been some construction mistake. Grant hadn't guessed wrong. He had gambled. He believed I'd cave, that if he made the structure big enough, expensive enough, and invasive enough, I'd decide fighting wasn't worth it. That's how men like him move through the world. They count on fatigue, on discomfort, on your need for peace. At the hearing, Melissa destroyed him. The survey was clear. The permit mismatch was clear. The photos were clear. The night use, the intimidation, the floodlight, the worker statement, it all painted exactly the picture it should have. Deliberate encroachment. Grant's attorney tried calling it a minor projection issue. The judge didn't buy it, especially after asking Grant directly whether he had continued accessing the balcony after receiving the stop work notice. He hesitated. Too long. That was all it took. The court ordered immediate non-use, full removal of the encroaching section, and compliance verification after demolition. Grant's face when the order was read was one of the most satisfying things I've ever seen. Not rage, shock, real shock. Like no one had ever told him no in a way he couldn't talk around. 3 weeks later, the balcony came down, piece by piece. I watched from my patio while the crew dismantled every beam that crossed over my line. The wood hit the dumpster with this heavy cracking sound that felt, honestly, like something haunted finally leaving the house. Grant never looked at me. Not once. When it was done, the light came back to the yard exactly the way it used to fall in the evening. Clean. Warm. Mine. And that was the part people don't always understand about disputes like this. It's never just about wood, or permits, or setbacks. It's about what someone is trying to take from you without saying the word take. Privacy, peace, control. The right to exist on your own property without someone hanging over you like a threat. Grant thought he built a balcony. What he really built was evidence, and I made sure he tore it down. How did you like the story? Subscribe to my YouTube channel.